Almost 3 million people in the UK vape. But according to an influential group of MPs, the NHS should be doing more to push e-cigarettes as a tool to help people stop smoking. Their report says the government is missing an opportunity to tackle what is one of the biggest killers and the single biggest cause of cancer in the UK. The Science and Technology Committee want to see an overhaul of regulations, advertising, rules and levels of taxation on e-cigarettes. And they want limits on their strength and use in public places reviewed. It comes just days after a study suggested vaping is actually more harmful than previously thought. So who's right? Well, we can talk to Norman Lamb, Lib Dem MP and Chairman of the Science and Technology Committee, Rosanna O'Connor from Public Health England, Dr Devinder Dosanjh, who co-authored that report I just mentioned, warning of some of the health dangers of e-cigarettes. Dave Holder gave up smoking for vaping. Professor Jonathan Grigg is a paediatrician from Queen Mary University, London. Sarah Jakes from the New Nicotine Alliance. Dan Marchant, who co-owns a vape club and online e-cigarette store. Thank you all very much for joining us. Welcome. We'll come first of all to you, Norman Lamb. Sounds like you want to make it as easy as possible for people to vape and also to get it free on the NHS.
Well, we should certainly be doing far more, I think, than we do now to enable people to give up smoking. Remember this really important fact. 79,000 people every year in England alone die from smoking-related diseases. And so the big public health goal is to encourage more people to give up smoking and thereby save lives. We know that vaping is one route to achieving that, and we should be doing more, I think, incidentally, particularly with people with mental ill health, where the smoking rate still remains stubbornly high at about 40%. And it's really worrying for me that a third of NHS mental health trusts ban vaping from their premises. This is an opportunity when someone's an inpatient to change behaviour, to encourage and enable them to give up smoking, and in that way, critically, saving lives.
Are you at all worried that in order to deal with something that obviously is a big public health issue, there may be a desire to promote something that the long-term health risks of which are not completely clear at this stage?
Well, the committee report very clearly says that there should be continuing research into any long-term risks of vaping. And I welcome the report that came out earlier this week. This is important to contribute to the scientific debate. But we have to base our judgment now on the basis of the wide consensus of opinion in this country. So we took evidence from the British Heart Foundation, from Cancer Research UK, from NICE, from Public Health England, who incidentally say vaping 95% less harmful than smoking. And when you get so many influential bodies being very clear about the evidence, surely in government policy we should be following that evidence in order to save lives.
We'll talk more about public opinion in a moment, actually, because loads of people are getting in touch with us today, and actually a lot of people are saying they do actually think it's really antisocial and they don't want it out in public. So we'll go to some viewer comments in a moment.
Yeah, that's another point, and I think, you know, we just want a public debate about public spaces. Okay. Restaurants are of course free to ban whatever they want in their premises, but we should at least recognise that the same public health risk that applies to secondary smoking doesn't apply to vaping. Okay,
well, let's bring in Devinder Dosanjh, because you are one of the authors of that report that we were discussing. Tell us more about what you found.
Yes, that's right. So we were funded by the British Lung Foundation, and we did a study looking at what the possible effects of this e-cigarette vapour were on an immune cell that patrols the lung to help keep our lungs healthy. And what we found was that when we expose these immune cells to the e-cigarette vapour, it not only kills those cells, but if you expose them to a lesser dose, it encourages them to produce lots of inflammatory chemicals, and it inhibits their function. And the key thing to take away from that is that if we were to take those same immune cells from smokers or from people with smoking-related lung disease like chronic obstructive pulmonary disease or COPD, then we'd expect those cells to react in the same way. So that's the concern, and what we're suggesting is that by no means does our study answer this question, but we need to have much more research to look into what the long-term effects of chronic exposure to e-cigarette smoke is.
Would you vape, now you know that?
No.
Norman Lamb, how do you respond to that then? Would you vape?
Well, look, I don't smoke. I used to, but I don't vape. But our own oldest son gave up smoking more than 20 a day and now vapes instead. And I have to say, as a parent, I'm immensely relieved that he is no longer smoking. Of course, the committee endorses what you've just heard, that there should be continuing research into long-term risks. But toxicologists who gave evidence made it clear that vaping does not contain the same chemicals that cause cancer in cigarette smoke. And so we have to apply the evidence that is there at the present about the difference between vaping and smoking. And I think we can save lives as a result of that.
OK, Rosanna O'Connor, Public Health England, your research is that vaping is at least 95% safer than conventional smoking. How have you come up with a statistic like that?
Well, we undertake reviews each year to make sure we have all the up-to-date evidence for e-cigarettes, and we are absolutely standing by the figure that there is a significant it's significantly better for people to vape than it is to smoke, and that the risk of vaping is minimal. And I think we really welcome the report from Norman's committee, because hopefully it will help to bust some of the myths there are about the risks of vaping in relation to smoking.
Professor Jonathan Rigg, what is you're a paediatrician. What is your view of the impact of vaping?
Well, I think this report contains some sensible suggestions. None of us would argue that someone who wants to give up smoking and can't choose a safer alternative could go to e-cigarette. But e-cigarettes are not without risk, as we know, and including from this evidence. My concern is that this report hasn't focused and misses a focus on the uptake by young people and adolescents, and that's really a big issue. It's an emerging issue. It dismisses the gateway hypothesis, the idea that vaping can lead to cigarette smoking. Well, that's controversial. The American review, bigger review in the States, concluded there's substantial evidence. The way that it's marketed as a lifestyle choice is attractive to young people. The flavours are attractive to young people, and I think the idea that we can release the advertising and say that this is a safe activity, I think is deeply flawed, and I think that is a major issue with this report.
Note actually, Dave, you were smoking up to 30 a day, I think, until recently. You started smoking at the age of 16, but you stopped by switching to vaping. Yeah, just it's been a revelation for my health and obviously the habit. Just 20 to 30 a day smoker. Really struggled with other means. I tried the gums, tried the patches, I tried the inhalators, and it just didn't cut it. And then after a conversation with my wife, decided to visit a vape shop. Was offered some absolutely sound advice, spot on advice, as advised by the person asked about my habits. Was recommended a setup, and at 12:05 on January the 4th, 2016 was the last time I had a cigarette, and it's that ingrained in my head that I never thought I would kick that habit. That date sits there predominantly because I'm so proud of the fact that I've managed to kick a habit which probably would have ended my life a lot earlier, and affected my asthma. I'm asthmatic as well. And since I switched to vaping, I rarely use my salbutamol inhaler. It's mainly for if I've had a chest infection from a cold. I can breathe, I can play with my kids and not worry about being out of breath. I don't smell awful. And I've kicked a habit that I'd wanted to for a long time, and vaping was that avenue to help me kick that terrible habit. Norman Lamb, I know you've got to go, so I just want to put quickly one comment from a viewer to you. LB on text: I don't think prescriptions for e-cigs should be handed out to encourage people to change smoking habits. After all, they find the money for normal cigarettes, so why should an already struggling NHS fund this ludicrous suggestion from MPs? Let people fund their own habits.
Well, just listen to the testimony of your guest in the studio just now. That for me was incredibly powerful, and we're talking here just about the initial upfront cost of the vaping equipment. Once someone has given up smoking and has shifted to vaping, they will save money. So there's no need for any continuing public subsidy of that. But getting people, particularly those on low incomes, over that initial hurdle, if that results in more people giving up smoking, saving lives, surely we should be in favour of that.
But what about, though, the potentially stored up long-term problems if it does emerge that there are long-term issues with vaping?
Well, I come back to the evidence that we heard. And incidentally, just to correct the guest in your studio, we're not saying this is completely safe. This is about harm reduction. And the wealth of evidence we received, as I say, from Cancer Research UK, pretty recognised organisation, from the British Heart Foundation, from the British Medical Council, all saying that this is a significantly less harmful thing to do than to smoke. And surely we should be following that advice.
Thank you very much. We'll let you go. I know you've got to rush off. Thank you very much for joining us. Sarah Jake's with us in the studio from the New Nicotine Alliance. In terms of switching one addiction for another, what are the risks with vaping? We've had people getting in touch with us saying they couldn't kick the habit on smoking, managed to do it with the help of a vape, but actually obviously nicotine is very addictive, and you're still getting the nicotine.
Nicotine is addictive, so I would argue that people aren't swapping one addiction for another. It's the same dependency, but people are finding a safer route. So if a person's addicted to smoking, dependent on smoking via nicotine, and they switch to a delivery method that is 95% safer, and I appreciate that, you know, obviously there's some argument about that figure, and also there are some unknowns in the long term, then those people should be supported to do that. And I take on board wholeheartedly that one of the strong recommendations of this committee report was for ongoing research. And that's necessary. Consumers want that. We welcome studies like the one from Birmingham, but those studies need to be put in context. And the context is the very great harms that people are doing to themselves by continuing to smoke. So we really need to put this in the right place in the public mind, where the risk lies, because at the moment the misperceptions are probably killing people.
Dan, you own Vape Club. It's an online e-cigarette store. It's been incredible, actually, isn't it? How quickly this sort of new alternative to smoking has grown up, and the potential impact of it. In terms of the sort of people who are buying stuff from your store, is it people wanting to kick the habit, or are many people coming to vaping having never smoked in their lives?
It's almost 100% people who have previously smoked. You know, we get countless stories, much like you're getting from the texts and the tweets, etc., that come through, talking about how it's changed their life, the health benefits that they felt, the benefits to their family, their financial benefits, etc. And it's people from all walks of life.
Okay, it's been great to talk to you all. We've had a lot of you to get in, so but we've maybe not been able to discuss as much as we would have liked, but it's been lovely to have you. Thank you very much, and thank you for all of your comments. Do keep them coming in. It's obviously a subject that you're very interested in. Now,